So at the top of the show, when I was laying out some of the principles that we're talking about here, I saw classical liberalism falling into the conservative category, as you just said. And it's funny because while I consider myself a classical liberal, and we can lay out every liberal principle there is that I would defend, it's scary to me because we get so caught up in words that, I don't want to be considered a conservative because I'm a liberal. It's a scary proposition.
Right. Well, again, it's about limited government and personal responsibility. As far as I'm concerned, what you've told me is that you are really somebody on my camp, far more so than somebody on Bernie Sanders' camp.
Well, I'm liberal in that I'm for gay marriage, and I don't mind if you smoke weed in your bedroom. As a general rule, I do like lower taxes, but I think we could have a progressive tax at some level, so we probably disagree a little bit there. I do think you should, if you keep making more and more, and especially as you're getting into the dozens of millions and the hundreds of millions, we could have a progressive tax that would tax those people more. I'm not necessarily for the 90% tax that Bernie wants. So some of the economics.
Well, I wonder. Let me ask you, why is it that nobody gave Dick Cheney love? Because Dick Cheney had a more progressive position on same-sex marriage than Obama did. When Obama was still evolving, Cheney.
But Cheney didn't have it till he was out of office. So that's it's a little disingenuous what he did.
He still years before Obama said he was in favor of gay marriage, said, "I'm in favor of allowing states to determine this." He said that years before Obama.
Was that while he was in office, though? I don't think that was while he was.
All I know was years before Obama, because when Obama became president in 2008, he not only said that he was in favor of traditional marriage, he said God was in the mix. All of a sudden, years later, God's no longer in the mix. I don't know how God was in the mix 4 years ago, and then God got out of the mix. But anyway, the point is that Dick Cheney said that he supported same-sex marriage on a state-by-state basis, well before the left did, well before Obama did, well before Hillary did, got no love.
So isn't actually, well, that I think would just go to because politicians are pandering. I mean, I don't know that makes Obama any more of a liar than any other politician.
I see what you mean. Well,
as much as they're all just pandering.
I'm talking
right?
about, I get you, but I'm talking about why somebody didn't give Cheney a couple of attaboys on that. I know that people on the left hate him, call him a neocon, and believe he was whispering in George W. Bush's ear and got Bush to do all sorts of bad things. But I would have thought on this issue, since the left considered such an important issue, I don't, by the way, that they would not have given Cheney a little bit of love.
Wait, what do you mean? You don't consider
same-sex marriage to be that big of a deal?
To me, it's give people equality, and then let's not think about it anymore. That would be what I would say.
Fair enough. I'm just saying I think the number one issue in this country is self-defense, and the number one domestic policy issue, as I mentioned, is the destruction of the family. These other things, same-sex marriage, war on drugs, global warming, I consider to be further down the list.
Yeah. So the war on drugs, you're actually for legalizing drugs, right?
I'm for the government getting out of it, both federally and at the state level.
Yeah, and that would do.
And interestingly, this may be a little boring for your viewers, but in the earlier in the 20th century, we had the war against alcohol. The Constitution was amended to fight the war against alcohol, and then it was amended again when we decided it didn't work. We've had since Richard Nixon this war on drugs. The Constitution was never amended for that. And I don't understand why people don't make the argument that it is illegal what the federal government is doing. Because in order to get rid of alcohol, Congress knew that they had to change the Constitution, which they did. There's no power, Article 1, Section 8, that gives the federal government the authority to wage a war on alcohol or a war on drugs. But to do the one on alcohol, they changed the Constitution and then rechanged it, but they never did that for the war on drugs.
Yeah, so how much of that do you think goes to why the black family has been affected? I mean, when you think about the amount of black people, black men especially, and minorities in general that are in jail, we now have for-profit jails, and a huge percentage of these people are in jail because of drug offenses.
Well, not that many, about 12 to 15%, but whatever
that seems pretty significant.
Whatever the percentage is, I think the war on drugs should be rethought, and we should deal with it as a health problem and not a criminal justice problem. But the reason for the large number of blacks behind bars, it goes back to what I said earlier about the breakdown of the black family. And not being taught the right kinds of values, and that has all sorts of other social consequences, including a greater propensity to commit crime.
Yeah. All right, let's back up for a second, because you quickly said something about Hollywood. And I know I follow you on Twitter, and you rail against Hollywood all the time. Basically, your argument is that
it's like kicking a puppy, though. Yeah.
It's become, and I can tell,
it's not that difficult.
Right. So just the other night, you were tweeting a little bit about the Golden Globes and the targets that Gervais was taking. Last night I saw you on CNN. Don Lemon, who I had on last week, was on the show last week. He was talking about Tavis Smiley, and you're not a fan of Tavis.
No, I've known him a long time. He doesn't preach what he practices. What he is a hardworking guy who came from Indiana with a big poor family and has done quite well with his life. And instead of telling people, bust your butt, do what I did, work hard, stay focused, it's the man's out to get you, social justice, racism everywhere. It's nonsense. Hollywood is an easy target because these guys, the Golden Globes, they've got these fine clothing, designer clothing and designer tux and their jewelry. They're all anti-Second Amendment, but they're all protected by armed security guard. How many of them plied into a Prius to get to and from the ceremony? I mean,
you're saying very few, I think. Is what
very few.
You're saying they were in big gas-guzzling
not a large number.
Limos, yeah.
Right, not a large number. And notice there were several Bill Cosby jokes. I think 3 or 4 Bill Cosby rape jokes. Mm-hmm. Not one Bill Clinton rape joke. Pourquoi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think, I mean, I'm a firm believer that a lot of them actually privately are supporting Republicans, or at least are voting Republican. But there's this idea that, okay, we're going to go on this.
You can't say it out loud.
You can't say it out loud.
Yeah, name one A-list young actor or actress who's an out-of-the-closet Republican. Just one.
Young? I mean,
I mean 20s, 30s, you can do it once you're Clint Eastwood, once you're Kelsey Grammer.
John Voight doesn't count as young, right?
No. No, but somebody in his 20s, 30s. Jennifer Lawrence, age star. Name one. There's got to be somebody.
Right.
They can't be 100% left-wing, but they will not say so because they know they won't get parts.
Right, and you would say that's not necessarily because they believe those things as much as just the structures in place.
It's the bigotry in Hollywood. The open-minded, empathetic people, they're fine as long as you don't say something that pisses them off.
Yeah.
And you say that you're going to support Donald Trump, you won't work if you're 20 or 30 years old. You won't work. You're going to lose jobs.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about first off, the time is
and think about that. These are the people who are in charge of 80% of what we see on TV and in movies. And if you come out and you're 20 or 30 years old and you're a rising star and you say, you know what, I listened to Larry Elder's show the other day and I think I'm going to vote Republican. It's finished. Done. Yeah. Done. Now, what kind of power is that to influence the minds of young people, to shape this country culturally? It is massive. There was a book called Primetime Propaganda by a young man named Ben Shapiro.
We're getting him on the show.
And because he looks so young and looks liberal, whatever that means, he was able to get on the record all these Hollywood producers, people that did Golden Girls, people that did Cops, and got them on the record saying, I would never hire a conservative. A conservative in this town will be screwed. A conservative in this town cannot make it. I intentionally put left-wing messages in my fare. I try to influence culture this way. Has them all saying this and has them on tape. And the book came out and it didn't make any difference. They didn't say, I'm sorry. They didn't say, we ought to rethink our assumptions. He interviewed Fred Silverman, who at one time was the head of ABC, CBS, and NBC, has Fred Silverman on the record saying a conservative cannot make it in this town. Now, if Hollywood has a great impact on how we think, on our culture, and you have this Gestapo essentially shutting out people who are conservative, what does that say? It's scary to me. It's frightening to me.
Yeah, well, messaging is everything, which actually brings this back to what you said about Trump before, which I think is sort of fascinating, that he's polling better with the black community.
Yes.
Because he has this sense of swagger, which I think you could probably relate directly back to, rap music and stuff like that.
Right.
But these guys they're not ashamed of their success. And that, so in a weird way, Trump is sort of doing the exact thing that you want to happen here.
I agree, but I think it's another big reason that Trump is scoring with black people. One of the most underpolled things in this country is how black people are pissed off about illegal immigration. When I was younger, there was a movie that came out in the 70s called Car Wash. Richard Pryor was in it, and George Carlin was in it. And it was about a day in the life of this car wash in South Central, not too far from where I grew up. Virtually all the employees were black. I defy you to go to a car wash in South Central now and see any employee who's black. Illegal immigrants have come over and taken over this business, and black people see it and they realize it and they are angry about it. And the Democratic Party, however, because of what I said earlier about trying to shift the electorate to the left, has, in my opinion, thrown blacks under the bus on this issue. And a lot of blacks who are aware of it are not happy about it. And Donald Trump's position on immigration resonated with a lot of black people. The other thing about Donald Trump that I think, in general, not just black people, is appealing to me anyway. And I'm not quite sure why some of my fellow Republicans are so adamantly opposed to Donald Trump. This guy, Dave, can self-fund. He doesn't need your money. Donald Trump was at a group called the Republican Jewish Coalition, and he was asked a question about does he feel that Jerusalem should be the undivided capital of Israel. His answer is not important. He said something like, I'm not sure, I haven't thought it through, and he got booed. And Donald Trump looked up and he said, I don't need your money. Now, there's a guy named Sheldon Adelson in Las Vegas. He's a multi-billionaire. Last election cycle, he gave Newt Gingrich $10 million.
A lot of money, yeah.
And a lot of people feel that but for that Newt Gingrich's attack on Mitt Romney and all the footage that he gave Democrats to use in the general election, Romney might have won. That's not the point. The point is he is a kingmaker. And right now, he is trying to decide whether he wants to give money to Ted Cruz or to Marco Rubio. He has Las Vegas business interests. I'm not mad at him for doing something to pursue his interests, but the point is he expects his phone call to be returned. Donald Trump can say screw you to all these people, the people that get subsidies for milk, the people that get subsidies for sugar, the people that get subsidies for this ridiculous product known as ethanol, the unions that keep Amtrak running. Donald Trump does not need their money. He does not have to take their phone call. So this guy can really do what should be done for the American people, which is to get all the crony capitalism and all these so-called special interests out of our government and get it down to the size it ought to be. Boeing gets money from the government. Google gets money from the government. Dutch Royal gets money from the government. This is corporate welfare, and the reason it happens is because they give contribution to the politicians who in turn then do their bidding. Donald Trump does not need their money. He is in a position to downsize the government in a way unlike any other politician I've ever seen.
Yeah, so there's a lot of irony there. What you're really talking about is that's truly systemic political problems.
Tell me about it.
The money and politics stuff. So that's something that should unite everybody across the board about how messed up our system.
It should. I mean, right now, LA is going to get two football teams probably. Yeah. Oakland and San Diego and St. Louis are all vying to come out here. By the way, all three of them used to play here. The Rams used to play here, Oakland used to play here, and the first LA Chargers, one of the AFL teams, started here, and they moved to San Diego. Now they all want to come back. Why? Because their respective cities won't give them hundreds of billions of dollars in tax subsidies. Why should a multi-billionaire get millions of dollars from taxpayers who then in turn have to pay all this to go to the game and watch multi-millionaire ball players? It's BS.
Well, that's like
it's corporate welfare.
That's like Citi Field.
Disgusting.
Citi Field, where the Mets play in New York, it was funded partly by taxpayer money. Right. But meanwhile, the government's bailing out Citibank, who has their name on
the whole thing is ridiculous.
So the Trump thing, real quick, one of the things is in the first debate, the first Republican debate about 3 months ago now, I thought the unmasking that he did was actually kind of amazing, even though I disagree with him on pretty much everything. But, when they asked him about going to Hillary's daughter's wedding, going to Chelsea's wedding, and he was like, yeah, I give them money,
I give money.
Show up at the wedding.
I give money to everybody. I'm a business guy. I got to do what I got to do.
So in a weird way, even if you don't for my liberal friends and my friends on the left, even if you hate the messaging and, all the Muslim stuff and all that, even if you hate all that, the unmasking of the system, and that's why I've also talked about how Bernie and Trump have a lot in common, because the core of what they're doing is the biggest threat to the system, right?
Right. Bernie and Trump have a lot in common in the sense that the establishment is scared to death of both of them. But Bernie will make things worse. Taking over large corporations will make things worse. Raising taxes on job creators will make things worse. What Donald Trump wants to do will make things better.
All right. Well, I barely got to any of the questions I have here, which is a testament to you. So I'm glad we got to sit down. So let me end this thing on a little bit of the future. Where do you think this country is going in the next year? So I sense, are you supporting Trump?
I haven't taken a position on anybody yet.
Yeah.
I will support whoever the nominee is over Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, certainly.
Yeah. Do you view Hillary and Bernie both sort of as equally, equally as dangerous?
Equally bad. I mean, when you've asked Hillary to give the difference, as Chris Matthews recently did, between a Democrat and a socialist, she couldn't do it. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the chairwoman of the DNC, was asked the same question. She couldn't do it. And Hillary has gone further to the left because she's threatened by Bernie Sanders. She's now come out by talking about a surcharge tax on millionaires. She didn't do that before. And she's also come out on the left now on guns. She didn't want to do that before. So Bernie's pushed her to the left. So as far as I'm concerned, their positions are pretty much indistinguishable.
Yeah, and again, this may go to show why the system's just broken, because both sides in the primary process have to stake out these positions that they know that they're not going to govern by. Right.
Richard Nixon used to say, when you want to win presidency in the primary, you run to the right, and then when you run in the general election, you run to the center. That's kind of how it works. In the primary season, you have to run to your base and then kind of run to the center to try and get independence. Yeah. That's just how it works.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. I didn't expect we were going to agree on everything. We didn't. That's fine. Maybe I learned a little something here. Maybe you learned a little something. Maybe you learned a little something. Come on. I see a glimmer in your eye.
So did you move a little bit towards the center?
Well, I consider myself, as a classical liberal, I don't consider myself off the deep end left. And maybe I think in general, a lot of people on the left are starting to realize.
How do you feel about vouchers?
I think we should have vouchers. I think you should have access to vouchers.
How do you feel about affirmative action? How do you feel about giving a black person or a brown person additional points just because they're black and brown over some equally qualified white person? Are you happy with that? Unhappy? Don't care?
Oh man, now I'm being interviewed. All right. So yeah, I would say that I think at some time, at some point in America, there was a reason that it really did make sense, because some of the more systemic stuff still exists.
Today?
And today it probably doesn't make as much sense anymore. I think you would agree with me on that, because that's pretty much what you just said.
I don't think it ever made any sense.
But that's exactly why I want to have these conversations, and why especially I think that liberals and libertarians should realize that we're sort of in the center together, and that there's a way to work together. So that's exactly why I wanted to do this.
Fair enough.
So all right. So I thank my guest Larry Elder. You can check out clips of the Larry Elder Show and more of Larry's work at larryelder.com.